We didn't get the full jam out of that one, Kyle.
Didn't get the full rock on. So now we're looking silly because we're grooving to it.
Because we're like grooving to our own beat. Yeah, that's right. I usually groove to my own beat, let's be honest. Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending where in the world you are watching us today. This afternoon, as always, you've got me, Jade Green, and my amazing co-host is Kyle Probert. And we are going to jam on all things about engineering the team of your dreams. So this is the Team Engineered podcast. Today, we've decided to talk about a topic that we've been threatening to talk about for, about a year. We've been talking about extreme ownership. And I'll give you some extreme ownership right now. We are a little late getting started today because all the tech had a heart attack and we didn't we thought we'd done the planning to test all the stuff beforehand, but we know whenever we're going to go live, something's going to fuck up. So we're live now. We're ready to rock and roll. Kyle, you said to me you've been having some interesting conversations today that's going to lead into this.
I have, but I think before I get to that, it's sort of given us a segue into a really interesting point on this. So I guess firstly we should talk about extreme ownership, which comes from the book Extreme Ownership by Jocko, Willink and Leif Babin.
Yes, Leif Babin, that's it.
I got it. I always forget the second one. So sorry, Leif, if you are listening, I am sorry because that you most definitely shouldn't be left off. So it's a book. It's all about two really high-level military guys who talk about extreme ownership of everything in your world. So I think the tech thing is a really, really good example. And I can remember quite a few years ago when I first, I actually listened to the book. I didn't read it. And for me, that's quite different because I prefer to read. But I actually listened to this one and I'm so glad I did because both of those guys read passages out of that book, like a significant amount of it. And I think without that, you just would not get the same story. I know some of those stories chilled me to the bone, absolutely chilled me to the bone. So really had a big impact. But I was sharing with a person that were, I guess I would probably describe as a partner. So they were a customer, but they were a supplier, they weren't just a customer, they weren't just a supplier. So they were both. Had a really good working relationship. He's moved on to a different role in a different company that doesn't match with us anymore. And I remember we were on a trip down to Sydney and I was talking about this really cool book, you've got to get on it. So he did. And then I remember talking with him a few months later and he's beating himself up and he went, like, everything's my fault. Okay. So we've got to pare it back a little bit. And the concept of extreme ownership is certainly not about everything being your fault because as we just experienced with technology and my friend Tashi, she was trying to work out her technology this afternoon as well for a 3:30 start. And unfortunately, it worked all day. Everything was running smoothly. It's been tested. We're all happy. And then it falls apart. So at times, the extreme ownership is, well, I actually did everything I could. It was against me. So I guess the point of all of that is extreme ownership is taking ownership for your part in everything. And Jade, you always say, where was I at cause?
Yes. Yeah, it's where was I at cause and what could I have done? It's really funny because I was actually listening to Jocko and Leif's second book this morning, which is The Dichotomy of Leadership. And
I have not done that one.
Oh, well, actually, I was listening to the Blinks as a recap. And the reason why they wanted to do the follow-up book is a lot of people thought that extreme ownership meant you had to be extreme in everything. And it wasn't about being extreme in everything. They were kind of like, oh, wait, I think maybe they didn't take it the right way. And so it's like it's the follow-on. And I'll talk a little bit later about the dichotomy of leadership because I think that that's a really interesting facet of the sort of line of thinking we're going on. But definitely, where are we at cause? And as you know, Kyle, when we do the reflection sessions on a Friday with all of our clients, it's like, okay, so what worked this week? What didn't work? And where were you at cause for both it succeeding and for maybe it not going as well as you want? And it can be as simple as I was at cause because I reacted rather than responded, or I was at cause because I ate shit food and I crashed and maybe I didn't make the best decision. Or like I could say with my tech right now, I'm at cause because I've been on the system for what's that now? Nearly probably 7-8 hours on my computer, and it hasn't had a break. It's been Zooming the whole time, cameras, everything going. I pushed the podcast back to do a kid's handover and drop off. And what I could have done, knowing that this has happened in the past, is restarted the computer while I was gone. Yep. And so I can go.
May not have solved the problem, but at least you've identified one more thing that next time might stop it. And I guess that's the key thing there, isn't it? It's not about beating yourself up and going, oh, I should all over myself. But going, well, okay,
should all over myself all the bloody time.
I think all of us do. And my friend, my colleague that was going through beating himself up, that's where he got to. You're shooting all over himself instead of identifying, well, it's not about beating yourself up and saying, I should have done that. But more about, okay, now I could have restarted the computer and, maybe that would have given it a break, given it a reboot, and it would have been good. Or, it's not just, oh, I should have done that.
It's the risk it's the most important thing of the reflection of where was I at cause and taking extreme ownership is how can I use this knowledge to mitigate risk moving forward or to duplicate results. So if it was a positive result, how do I replicate that? So how do I reduce risk, or how do I replicate good results? And if you don't take the time to reflect, and if you don't take ownership, sometimes some people, like I have a client that specifically said to me, I'm really bad for recognizing or giving a pat on the back when something's gone right, and I just steamroll forward. He said, so if you think I'm disinterested, if we're moving forward and I'm saying what next, then you know that I'm happy and I'm content with the work that I've done. But it's super important for us to be able to reflect and recognize the good as well to be able to replicate it. Otherwise, how people say, oh, I just got lucky. Well, actually, if you thought about it and high performers just got lucky, it's like, actually, no. Well, if I look at it, I had been going to the gym more regularly, or I had been sleeping more, or I'd actually been meditating, and I've been doing this journaling thing. And then you look at it and you're like, oh, actually, I did put myself in control. And
that's we know the extreme bit.
Yeah.
That's the extreme bit. It's not about doing all of those things to the extreme, but the extreme bit is identifying that every little thing plays a part in the success or the unsuccess. Let's not call it failure. Let's call it unsuccess or the learning. Maybe we should call it learning.
Yeah.
In the
Fail
learning.
forward. Yeah. And those learnings, yes.
It's a really good point that you brought up there. And I've noticed this with soccer teams and kids soccer teams in particular, where two teams playing back to back, and both teams lose 8 or 9-0. Now in soccer, that's pretty big numbers, and the first team comes off, and at halftime, their coach has given them the rev up, the typical boom, boom, boom. Come on, we can do this. We got this, but with a very negative undertone. And then the second team goes on and loses exactly the same, but their coach at halftime is going, now this was fantastic, guys. You did this and it was amazing, and you did this bit and it was awesome, and all of this and a generally positive, upbeat vibe. Now they did a million things that were wrong, but what he did is he found the bits at the right time that were right and gave them the boost, and they played a much better second half. and then they came off the field laughing and cheering.
Because what you reward gets repeated.
Yeah. So
and some people don't realize, sorry, just on that, Carl, like some people don't realize, especially depending on where someone's at in their emotions and their cycle, even bad feedback can be seen as a reward. If someone's craving being seen, craving being given feedback, children or staff members, team members alike, if the thing that's happened is the thing that gets them the reward that they want, that's what's going to get repeated. Like we see that with young kids that don't know how to reconcile, throwing food on the floor that's trying to get attention. They don't know what they're trying to do. Oh, that got me attention. Do that again.
Yeah. And for some people, for some adults, it's exactly the same thing. And it's not necessarily a manipulative behavior that they're trying to exhibit. And it's not necessarily a deliberate act, but without realizing they're craving some attention or some sort of feedback, even just feedback. And what they're doing is their behaviors modeling things that just get them some sort of attention. Now, as I say, it's not necessarily a manipulative thing or a conscious thing. It's just that the brain's going, I need some attention. I need this. I need some feedback from the world. And how can I get it? I'm going to throw a brick through a window.
Yeah. I'm going to break things.
No, let's not. But, and it could be, doing something that's not quite perfect in their work, so that someone has to take the time to talk to them.
And so much of that can be unconscious. And we've labeled it as a lot of the time it gets labeled as attention, but it's actually someone's human need of connection. And they're like, and so that's why it doesn't matter if it's positive or negative. It's the connection with another human that they're seeking. And that's where we do see people potentially, leaving things out or needing a little bit more help because their human's needs not being satisfied. And especially if outside of the workplace that need is really being unfulfilled, that might be the only place that it can get fulfilled. And we're kind of squirreling on the topic there, but this is why it's so important for you to build human connections with your team members that isn't just about do the job, get the task done. Meetings are about ticking things off the to-do lists, and we've talked about like the kicking of asses and stuff, but it is about that human connection, because if you can help satisfy that human need, then the less desirable behavior doesn't need to show up.
Definitely. And if we go to the ownership part of that, is identifying whether you are fulfilling the needs that you need to fulfill in your team. So, as you said, it's not just rolling into the meetings and kicking people, and it's not just rolling into the meetings, ticking things off a list and all of that sort of stuff. And I know, I 100% know that, I'm on a schedule of, I've got an hour for this meeting. Let's go. And you forget about the other things that probably need to happen because you're wrapped up in, I've got to get this done. Like we've got all of this stuff we've got to deal with. Let's just come on, let's go. And what actually everyone else needs to be able to do well is 5 minutes at the start to talk about something different.
Yeah. And I think we're recording this when most of Australia is in full lockdown, New Zealand's in full lockdown, other parts of the world, maybe not so much, but especially we see with people doing Zoom meetings, it's kind of really clinical. Like get in, get the thing done, get off. And the piece that's really missing, like especially those that are used to being in an office and being connected, if they're all stuck at home and they've got no outside connection anymore, and the only time they have an opportunity to connect is clinical, imagine what that's doing. And like we can see what it's doing to people's emotional health and mental well-being and things like that. And I think that leaders need to realize, we didn't talk about this on this podcast. I think we talked about it on our Build a Kick-Ass team call on Wednesday, that sometimes the purpose of the meeting isn't about just clearing the hurdles and getting that shit done. The purpose of the meeting might be purely around connection, so that the mental health of the person and that side of things is there because that's going to actually make them more productive and able to problem solve better when they come off of that call, or even have then the safety and security, the trust that they can reach out to somebody else for help on a task, or say that they're stuck. Because if they feel insulated and they feel like everything is just bang, 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 the trust that it's okay just to reach out to somebody else and go, hey, could you help me with this? Because if you're in the office, you might just walk around and tap someone on the shoulder and go, could you just have a quick look at this? But it feels like a little bit more intrusive to be like, yo, I send you a Zoom link, and then can you get into the Zoom link? And then could you have a look at this? Like, it feels more intrusive where it shouldn't. And I think some of the tools, like, go.
So in the last couple of weeks where we've had these lockdowns, I've been consciously encouraging the team to just jump on a video chat when they've asked me for help. And they'll send me a text message, hey, I need a bit of help with this. And so we use Google Chat and Google Meet and the G Suite stuff. And so it allows me to just drop a link straight in there, click on it, no matter what device they're on, they're on a video link. Makes it that little bit more personal, but it also means that, okay, can you just show me what you're looking at? And they can share their screen straight away. And it's like looking over their shoulder and talking through things with them. And it just makes it that little bit more personable and personal. But it was a conscious decision that this is going to be more connective in the team, even if it's just one-on-one, so that we can all sort of stick together through this crazy lockdown.
Yeah. And people have probably heard us on the podcast before talking about every which way you can, making sure that you do it with a video call or at least a voice memo rather than just the text that can be misread, like, because if the context isn't taken, but the humanization's taken out of it. And any which way that you can keep the human connection going is far better for everyone involved, not just your team, but your orbit, your family, your siblings, and things like that as well. Like, my sister and I will just video call each other when we're putting our makeup on in the morning. The only time we hardly even look at each other. I'm doing my mascara, and Lux is like, Auntie Jade, look at this, and I'm like, mid mascara. Hang on, darling. But it's so
I don't
much
normally
more.
have to worry about the mascara bit.
But the hair, I know it takes that a while.
Oh, it takes ages to get the hair done.
It takes forever. I know we've talked on the putting the onus on the leader for how we can set our team members up for success as well. But when we look at extreme ownership and that ownership piece, again, where are we at cause? It is really looking at the individuals in our team and maybe putting ourselves in their shoes to be able to go, what's the ownership I can take to help them to really step up? Like, I don't know if it was in Extreme Ownership or another book I was listening to, but basically, if you've got a team member that keeps getting things wrong, is it the team member's fault or is it your fault?
Yep, definitely. And that's the ownership bit, isn't it? That's the bit where, have I given them enough information? Have I set them up for that success with everything that I can provide? And sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes the answer is no, you have not done everything that you should have. You've made a whole bunch of assumptions about what they should or shouldn't be able to do. And here we are, the job hasn't happened. And look, I know I've been guilty of it way too many times, whether it's not enough description. Brene Brown talks about paint the picture of success. Don't just describe it. Don't just draw it. Paint the picture. Paint every detail so that everyone understands. And we talk about profiles a lot, and for me, that star creator, for me, it's like go. I've already got the picture. I know what the picture looks like, and I don't need to give you all those details. You just need to do this. But the extreme ownership bit is that I need to actually slow down and paint that whole picture for them, because all those fine details help them fill out the bits that I haven't explained.
Yeah, it takes me over. Again, I'm not sure if it was an extreme ownership or the dichotomy of leadership now, but it's the same authors, same sort of theme. But it comes back to that. Did they get, why are they struggling? And it's usually because we haven't given the why. And the example in the book is Jocko had told the whole team to learn how to reprogram their radios to army frequency. And I think it was actually Leif, was it, or Chris Babin, I think that gets saved. And so they end up finding themselves in friendly fire, and they've had to reprogram the radios to be able to save their comrade Chris from friendly fire. But what had happened was he told them all to do it, didn't tell them why, left them to their own devices, and they're just about to go out on the mission that night, come back, and he's like, have you all done it? No one's done it. And the tone of the book is he made sure everybody did it. But the reflection piece was he didn't explain why it was important. So if they don't understand the why, especially for the different profiles, I think we've touched on this before, if they don't understand the reason why behind it, their motivation to do it, or to do it at the level that you would want it executed at, won't be there, because it's kind of like you just tucked another task on my plate. Whereas if you can paint that picture of success, but then layer it with, okay, this is what success looks like and why that's important and how that fits into the next piece of the puzzle. Once they've got that, and Simon Sinek's always start with why, but once they're enrolled in that, then they understand the consequence of not doing it, and not doing it on time, or not doing it, not executing at the level that you needed effectively done by.
The book, it's described as commander's intent.
Ah.
I think that's how they describe it when they're using it. Is so we're talking about paint the picture. I think they're talking about the commander's intent. What's the intent that the commander has on that? That's a good point to pause there. You seem to have the wrong one.
I've been waiting for you to cheers me. I don't want to be rude.
So while we are doing a cheers.
I love this. Kyle's always got beautiful butterflies and nice things in the background. And I've like got the man cave that I could build. And by me build, I mean my poor broken-legged boyfriend that did it for me on a knee scooter because he knew how badly. I was like, no, must have nice thing.
No, I don't hide away from the stuff that my kids do for me. So it's an integral part of who I am, and I'm happy to share that with the world. There's no point in being embarrassed by a few butterflies around the place.
There is nothing to be embarrassed about there. There was something I wanted to anchor in on, though, when you were talking about the value of be awesome. The thing that was super important that I think when those virtues got rolled out, virtues were rolled out, that's my own teaching, failing, is that, but that you did go through and explain what be awesome meant, and that and you really did give them the permission and the ownership over what that meant to them. And every single person got to have input into what be awesome meant, and not be awesome in terms of in the office as a team member, in the training room or on the client site, being there as a trainer, and what it meant also to them in their orbit, and like for Scott being out in the scouts and contributing to the community, and what being awesome actually meant to them, rather than just going, okay, here's an epic word on the wall that we're going to tell our clients, well, awesome, pick us.
We just touched on virtue and value there, and I think that's a key point between value and virtue. Is value means that you come to work and you do this, and this is how you're awesome, whereas as a virtue, it's like, well, we encourage you to go and be your own awesome. We encourage you to get out in your community and be a part of your community and do something awesome for your community or your family or your friends. I think that's a key difference between the value side of come to work and do this and be awesome like this, and exclude people from the clique, as opposed to be inclusive in all of that with a virtue. And this is how we strive to it. We were talking about this earlier in the week in the Kick-Ass Team group, and talking about how the virtues are different or applied differently for everyone. Planet Plus. For some of us, Planet Plus is buying recyclable cleaning products and zero waste stuff, and all like to some extent a little extreme on it, whereas for someone else it's about recycling things that they'd normally put in the bin.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Everyone's still marching towards that same common virtue about improving or having a challenge to be a little bit better in looking after our planet or being awesome or growth minded or whatever the actual virtue is.
Yeah, I love that, because the other thing you said was, again, it didn't need to be to the extreme. Like, being Planet Plus didn't mean we're hugging all the trees and we're buying biofueled cars that are run on old chip fryer fat. It's about just having that awareness of, how could I do something a little bit more Planet Plus? How could I do this just that little bit better? How could I maybe not waste as much, like not grab the cling film and wrap it all the way around the container and then seal it?
It's just about having something that we can march towards, and the team has taken it and run with it, and what it's given them is a consistent and constant reminder to try and do things just a little bit better, that we all want to do a little bit better to change the whole world. So every time that they do something, it sort of gets filtered through the lens of these virtues before a decision's made, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, really cool. Where have you seen, what's an example of extreme ownership in action on, say, a job site?
Oh, geez, that's I think it's all about saying it was me. And I know that when I've been involved and when I've had teams running, that I've always tried to sort of go, okay, if this isn't working, what have I done? What do I need to change? What do I have to do? Not what have they done, but what do I have to do? So it can be something as simple as, has the team got access to water because it's a really hot day, and they're beating their backsides out, but they're making mistakes just because they're hot and thirsty and tired, exhausted. And it can be something as simple as that. And it seems like a really silly thing, but did I make sure that the team had water bottles with them, or can I get someone to run out there and look after them while they're down in the when we were working on a machine here in Newcastle on a ship, like 40-degree days outside and you're down in the hull of the ship, it's bloody hot.
Yuck.
And you don't want to come out because it's too hard to get out of there. So how do I make sure that the team is still performing as well as they can just by doing simple things like that? Other things can be, and like, I think my team probably look at me a bit funny, and I guess it's a cultural thing. We kind of need this tool to be able to do the job a bit better or easier or quicker. Okay, let's get it. Let's do it. But no, let's let's do it. Why do something that's harder for twice as long and over again when we can just buy the tools to do the job properly? And I think, that's probably two examples that can be applied to just about any team in the world. Is, are they looked after from a needs point of view, but have they got all the right tools? Don't leave them hanging. Don't leave them with the wrong tools, because at best it makes the job harder. At worst, it's a safety issue.
And I suppose then, if you were to look at that, I know most of the time you've tried to explain it in that, but we could then go, okay, extreme ownership. What else, or what other way could I maybe try to explain this to them so they understood? Like, maybe looking at their personality, like the profile type of those people. It's like, what do they need to see, or how do they need to see something presented to be able to make a better decision? How could I paint maybe the picture of like the worst case scenario? Or like, do you know what I mean? They might need to see data, or they might need to have a story or an anecdote or an example even of where we've seen this in the past. Now, not saying that's always going to work, and lots of the time you've tried it already, but often we can take one step back and go, actually, let me look at all those elements, like the behavior types, the decision making, the action dynamic, and is the way that I'm trying to present the solution the way that they can understand it? And doing what we've always done, if that doesn't work, what's that called?
Insanity.
Insanity. Yes.
Charlotte asked this question of my team last week, I think it was what was something you wish you'd learned about fluid power earlier in your career? And I started to answer that question, and I had these technical things, and I was like, oh, I wish I'd known these. And I went, you know what? Actually, I wish I had the skills to explain what I knew to the people that didn't actually understand it. And as a tradie, and particularly as a young tradie, I guess for me, I've been around hydraulic systems since I was this big, and as much as that doesn't necessarily make you an expert, it does give you a depth of experience that just can't be bought. Being around it, hearing the stories, being in the workshop since you're 5, by the time you get to 25, you've actually got quite a depth of experience that you just don't realize. And if I had the skills when I was a young tradesperson or even an apprentice, and not just a loudmouth gobby apprentice, I probably could have saved a lot of heartache, a lot of hassle for people around me, because I was able to explain what was going on in a way that they could understand, rather than them hearing me say words and going, yeah, what would you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was my fault. And in hindsight, I look back at that and I go, well, that was me. I obviously wasn't explaining that very well. At the time, it was like, look at these friggin' idiots. Why won't they listen to me?
Monkeys. Yeah. Well, I think what's one thing that you could maybe tell a team member, like someone that's sitting in a team, they feel like they haven't got their leader listening to them. How could they take ownership over a situation? What do you think some of the things that, say, either an apprentice or a younger person or someone that doesn't have the brand equity with the leader as yet, and they feel like they're not listening, what could they do to take ownership and step up?
So it's about understanding that people don't necessarily hear, and that you need to take extreme ownership of the communication process. So Charlotte did a really, really good course or a presentation with my team on communication and owning communication process. And the conversation that I had today, and someone's over here giving me the bird like this because we spoke about this. I think the key part is understanding that no matter what the message is, and no matter who the person is you're giving it to, it's still your responsibility that they understand the message.
Do you know what's really funny? I had a little conversation with the kids yesterday afternoon when I picked them up, and they were talking about how sometimes they don't feel heard, or this, that, and the other. I said, okay, well, what do you think's happened before you're not being heard? What's happened, or how are you speaking, or what was the tone that may have put the other person on the back foot, or got their back up, or turned them into wall? Just know what do you think could have been done? And then I went through to explain the same thing. It's like, it's not the responsibility of the person receiving the information to get it right. Like, it's not 100% their responsibility. We have to think about how we're communicating if we want the message received, and received in a way that gets the result that we're ultimately trying to get. So is this the little segue? You told me before that you had a little conversation just before this call. And
it did play out, and I've got someone pulling faces at me at the moment about that. So
I can imagine that face.
This was an amazing conversation to have, because it leads straight into what I'm going to be talking about this afternoon. And so the first thing is to actually, in anyone in that situation, if you haven't got the brand equity, as you spoke about, with that person, whoever that person is, for them to feel that you're authoritative on this topic, then it's your responsibility to understand that you need to get the message right in the right way at the right time so that they can actually understand it. And there's a lot of layers to this. And as you start to peel those layers back, there's a lot of light bulb moments that you might find. So timing's the first one, and you just spoke about that with the kids. If you've just been yelling and screaming at each other, there is no point trying to deliver a message. And for kids, that's very, very hard because they've just had this big blow up and they don't realize that I'm not being heard because I'm just not being heard, when actually you're not being heard because you're in this heightened state, which means everyone else is in this heightened state, so no one's listening. And the message just can't, it's not going to penetrate. You might as well, the example that I gave was Bondi Rescue last night. The lifeguards walked up to this Korean lady and went, your children nearly died. And she went, yes.
Yes.
The words weren't getting in. So, the first thing is the timing bit. Then you need to think about, and again, this is the ownership bit. How does this person receive communication? How do they learn, or how do they communicate? And, lots and lots of people like to talk. Lots and lots of people won't hear a word that's said. And I know for me, if I need to make a decision, if I need to really understand something, I have to read it. That's and it's a bit of a confliction for the star creator thing, because I'm also happy to fly off and fly by the seat of my pants. But if I actually need to understand something, and I know I need to understand it, and I need to get the right information, I have to read it. So it doesn't matter if someone wants to speak it at me, it doesn't matter. You might as well be speaking in Korean, because I'm not going to hear it. So, it's delivering the message in the right form. So for me, if you want me to truly understand it, write it to me. For Jade, if you really want Jade to understand it, please don't write it.
Which I'm like, oh crap. But I voice message you everything. Okay, new process. Okay, please send a text message to Kyle.
and that's, while we're communicating, and the cognitive ability is still high. I'm not overstressed. I'm not under a lot of pressure. There's not a really big time. Like the lion's not chomping at my feet. I can process audible, or I can process visual. It's not a problem. But as soon as there's that heightened state, I have to read. As soon as there's any sort of pressure and I need to make decisions.
Got it. More ClickUp stocks coming your way. Okay, add tasks to ClickUp for Kyle. Stuck, urgent.
But equally,
Siri thinks she's K.
But for you, it's completely the opposite. Like for you to try and read something significant and actually get it, like it's just not going to happen, is it?
No, but I do need to see. I need to see things sometimes. Like I need to, more like, okay, show me on screen. Oh, well, you know what it's like. If I try to read, if someone tries to get me to proofread the Word document for a landing page. Bad.
Make it pretty into the landing page, then I can proofread.
Yes.
Then I can see the words.
And they're like, why didn't you tell us all those words before? I'm like, I didn't see them. No, like legitimately, I didn't see them.
But that's the ownership bit, is that, as the team member, the team members need to understand that and not get frustrated by it. But I gave you the Word document, but the Word document meant nothing.
I read it. I didn't see those words. But they've taken ownership of that now. And when we scoped the project, they literally put in, like, they send it Kyle to review, because you review the Word document. You don't care about the landing page. And then it comes back and Mark makes it pretty. And then there's time in there, and they know how long it takes to get me. They put time in for me to review the pre-thing and book Kay to sit on Zoom and babysit me to do the thing. And then it goes back, and then it comes back again. But the team's taken ownership over that process to go, actually, Kyle's not going to see it on the pre-thing. Jade's not going to see it if it's not in the pre-thing. We can work with that and manage that process.
Yeah. And it works because we're all communicating in the way that we need to communicate with the people that we need to hear that right message. And it even comes back, we talk about the profiles, the talent dynamic profiles, and it's the same thing. When we're communicating with people of a different profile, we need to understand whether they need the detail or they don't.
Me.
And when they're two completely separate ones, and this was the conversation we're having today, when they're opposite, when one's a little more creative and isn't into the fine details, and the other one is lordy and needs to have every single detail and then ask some more questions, it's a rub.
And have it in bullet point format and the formula that goes with it that came to the result.
Yep. In Times New Roman, 11-point size. Because they like to read, they don't like to hear, they don't want to see a picture, they want to read it. So not only do they want the details, but they want to read the details and more details. But I guess what we can forget is that actually gives that person security to make the decisions they need to make. They feel more comfortable because they're wrapped in the bullshit details. It's going to be awesome. Let's just go.
Why don't you get it, you fucking party pooper?
And look, I know
she's sitting there right now, like I can.
Yeah. I think something's going to be thrown at me in a sec. So, and I know I am 100% guilty of this, and very, very often. I operate very, very fast. Heaven forbid if there's been too much caffeine put in, because I operate even faster. And it's go, 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 go. Let's and the concept of fail forward and fail multiple times doesn't scare me. I'm happy to try something. I'm happy to fuck it up. I'm happy to march forward, and it washes off. Yep, we fucked that up. Let's try the next one. Let's try the next one. Let's try the next one.
The more failures you have, the closer you are to winning.
And for me, I'm happy to operate that way. As I say, it's high paced. Let's go. The problem is that I need people to do the finishing stuff, and the detail bit and the timing bit. And often those people actually need me to slow down, and that's where I need to take ownership of it. They need me to slow down, give them the details, give them the timing, give them the painted picture, fill in more of the gaps so that they can actually support me, so that I can achieve what I want with their I was going to say support and help, but with them helping me, with them on team, on board. It's not about I didn't want that to come out like the star is the guiding light. We're a team. We're marching together, but we're doing different parts of that role. Someone's doing the airy fairy dreaming bit, and that's okay. But I also need people to help me with timing and details, and they're marching with me, and equally as important.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think that was a really good recognition to this week. Again, on that Wednesday call, when we were like, what was making a difference for the team was that you were actually ticking tasks off in the stuck list, and for them, like, it just causes so much anxiety when a task isn't done on time, or is constantly carried forward, or is still in the list, and it wasn't about it had absolutely zero to do with the importance of that task, but for them, that they didn't feel safe and secure when things, because for them, they can't finish their day. Like, for a couple of them, they cannot finish their day and go home until the to-do list is done. And when somebody else doesn't operate like that, or they don't understand that's not important, that particular one, the story that they can be telling themselves is, this doesn't matter to them. This isn't important. They're too busy doing other stuff. And they just started assigning all of these things because if they were to leave something undone, that's what it would mean to them. And just for you to take that ownership to go, actually, do you know what I need to do? I need to, even if it's just a little update in there and I've looked at this acknowledgement piece, that helps them move forward and gives them that sense of security. And so you've taken that ownership for us. And like me, I have to take ownership over the fact that I just don't get the boring shit done if left to my own devices. And so Kay's taken ownership upon herself to manage up. So she books time in my calendar and she just sits on Zoom with me until it's done. That's it. You're doing it.
I actually think it's good for us that Kay is so far away. I feel that at times, even if Kay was in the country, she would still get us.
Mm.
But Kay is amazing.
Steve's like, do you just wish that Kay was like just sit right next to you? I'm like, yes. And then sometimes I'm like,
some days. Some days I feel I'd be in a lot of pain.
Yes. So you just don't want to do the stuff that she's going to make you do, which is usually the stuff that I've told her to make you do.
Yeah.
And then when she can't get the results, she messages me and she's like, can you please poke Kyle? I want to just do a little, there was one thing that I listened to this morning that it's just that it's been something that was important, and it kind of came up in one of our other calls this week as well, Kyle. And it came from the Dichotomy of Leadership, which was the follow-on book, but it boils back down to extreme ownership and having to own the responsibility of doing something. But it was the story that, I won't go into the detail of the story they tell, but basically they had to lose a man. They didn't deliberately lose the man, but the reflection was if they didn't lose a man and didn't have this casualty in an exercise they had to do, a mission they had to do, then they would have potentially lost a whole platoon of the army rather than just one of their SEALs. And so when they were reflecting upon it, it was like, fuck, I shouldn't have taken this mission. We shouldn't have done it. We lost one of our men. But then when they came back and looked at it and went, if we didn't lose that one man, we literally would have lost a platoon. So the story they were telling, I think, was actually to do with a mining company afterwards when they went in for management consulting. And they were saying to the leader, he's got 680 staff on this one mine site. And they're going to go under. And corporate is either going to pull him as a leader, and he deeply, genuinely, really cares about his team and all of his people. But if he doesn't take action and get the budget back on track and all of that, they'll pull him out and pull someone in that doesn't give a fuck about the people and will be ruthless, or they'll close the site altogether and up stumps and all 680 are gone. So they tell the story of, okay, sometimes you've got to take ownership. You've got to do the hard thing. To the way you care most is to do the thing that is the hardest, and you have to lose the 80. And the story goes on to say, like, the 600 got to say they went back into profitability, and it meant 600 people kept their jobs, and unfortunately 80 didn't. And one of the conversations I think we were having on the Kick-Ass team call or earlier this week, I think it was do we keep team members if they're good for culture but they're bad at their job? Or do we keep them when they're great at their job but they're not great for the culture? And when it comes to that, for me, I look at it and often say, sometimes you've got to lose the limb to save the body, and you've got to cut the cancer out. And unfortunately, even someone who's great for culture, if they can't fulfill any part of the job, they become a cancer, because it starts being either you're rewarding bad behavior, not bad behavior, bad performance, poor performance. Yep. Because a lot of people don't understand why it's a bad fit, and so they don't understand it. Or people start getting resentful to that person because they have to carry them. And then the person who was good for culture becomes bad for culture. But worse, for the person who can't keep up, it often ends up eroding at their own self-esteem and their own sense of being. And ultimately, in the end, it ends up literally in tears.
So I think Richard Branson talks about this in one of his books, where he hired a lady, and I've got in my mind that her name was Paula for some reason, but he hired her in the early days of Virgin, I think it was, Virgin flying, Virgin Atlantic. And, you know, while they were really, really small, was this amazing person, did all of these things. And, you know, after 5 years, I think it was about 5 years, had grown to a position where didn't fit the company anymore. And so he's got this really strong loyalty with someone that's, you know, been there from the ashes or from the dust, so to speak, and built up and has been amazing and has done all these amazing things, but just isn't working now. Like the organization's changed and it's all different. And so had to make the decision to let her go. And like, I just don't have anything for you. There's nothing, you know.
There's no next tour of duty.
Yeah, it's gut wrenching. You know, I've got this amazing person that's been amazing in my business, but I've got nowhere to go. But he goes on to say later in the book that they're talking, they've caught up a few years later, and she said, it's the most amazing thing you could have done for me. I've gone on to this amazing role. I'm working in this business. I'm doing all these awesome things. I can't thank you enough for getting rid of me. But that's it. You know, like sometimes people outgrow where they are, but they go on to do an absolutely amazing job somewhere else. And it's our job as a leader to recognize that to some extent, but also to encourage it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the instance that I was talking about, they had a bit of a conversation about it, and the person actually decided to come forward and say, do you know what? The pressure is too much in this role. I'm not a good fit for this role. And I feel like with your support, I could transition on and just by having the open conversation. So I think by that leader taking onus upon herself to actually sit down and have the tough conversation and supporting and being open and transparent gave the person the opportunity to also be open and transparent. And that's something that I really love about when Reid Hoffman and Chris G talk about tours of duty, and that a tour of duty is a moral contract rather than a legal contract, but setting that foundation up when they very first sign on, whether that be sign on into their as a new employee or into their next role or whatever, but setting up that trust that it's okay to move on as long as your moral obligation has been fulfilled, and that you have openly have these conversations, and that we know that, you know, not every role, like this is not the industrial era anymore. You're not signing on for like till death do we part. Yeah. And laying that foundation for those conversations is super, super important. And on the flip side, if you have a genius, a star who is amazing, and you can't uphold helping them to continue to grow and succeed, it really is upon you to allow them to move on and to go.
Nice. Yeah, absolutely. Louise just said it happened to her, deciding to move from Sydney to Newcastle. So I know Louise has had a very interesting career path, and you know, good or bad, we sort of grow from all of those experiences. And I think the extreme ownership of whether you have moved on and that's been nasty, or if you've moved on and that's been good, the extreme ownership is that it's yours to own that decision to move. You know, if you want to leave on bad terms, you can certainly choose to do that. If you want to leave on good terms, then you most definitely can choose that, no matter who that organization is. You know, I've had employees where they've transitioned through my business into another one, and you know, before they even knew they had a job with me or the other company, we planned their whole career out for them. But we made the choice to bring those people in and have a good relationship with them, as they moved on, just because we wanted them in our orbit, to be a part of our orbit, and that's a part of the ownership that we have to take in that.
Beautiful. I think that's around our mic drop moments.
Oh, don't drop the mic; they're too expensive. But
I know this one's luckily on a bouncy arm now.
So I think a couple of key things that we sort of talked about today was that extreme ownership is about asking yourself, where was I at cause, either good or bad? What could I have done to either encourage this to happen well, or what did I do that might not? And reflecting on it so that you can either amplify the good or mitigate the bad. And I think we also talked about the important thing is, don't use it to shoot all over yourself. Don't use it as a blame mechanism to go, oh, I should have done this, I could have done that, and beat yourself up all the time. It should be about growth. It should be about actually getting better and looking forward, failing forward, rather than falling backwards, so to speak. I'm not sure about what the next bit was. It's really important that you just take ownership for just about everything in your world.
Yeah, I think and in every situation, it's really just about where can you own a decision. I think the second part was more around where can you own the decision. That's the bit. That's the one. That's it.
That's the one. Drop it there. Where can you own the decision? So as always, ladies and gentlemen, please talk to us in the comments below. Wherever you are watching, shoot us a message wherever you want to try and get in touch with us. We would love to hear what you'd like us to talk about next or in the future. I'm Kyle. Next to me is the wonderful Jade, and we have been talking extreme ownership today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you see us, and we'll see you next time.